Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
Film Fist! Season 2, Episode 3 just dropped. What's your thoughts?
I think it was another great episode, don't you?
I'm getting sneaky suspicion that Boyd has changed. He's not the same man anymore.
I don't know why you've got something in for Boyd this episode.
He feels off today. He just feels... there's something about him. He doesn't feel normal. I don't know if it's the leeches or whatever. I don't know. He feels sketchy, man.
I didn't get that personally, but I like that you are watching him closely because he's very important. He definitely seems to think that he's in a dream now. He's turning into his wife Abby almost. He is pretty big risk right now.
Just so we point out, spoilers ahead.
It seemed to me like a bit of a filler episode. There was a lot of character development in particular. It was all about the characters reassembling, meeting each other again, a bit more character development, a bit more backstory, but there wasn't a huge lot of plot.
And a lot of emotional meet-up. Nothing much really happened. Even the meeting between Jade and Victor was a bit underwhelming. Nothing much actually happened, other than Victor not talking again. Surprise.
As you predicted.
Yeah, weird prediction.
Yeah, lots of character development. We saw Boyd and Ellis sort of getting on again, Jim and Tabby, the Matthews, they're getting on again, and Fatima and Ellis deciding to get married, but also they seem to be less good than they were in season 1, I think.
Yeah, Fatima seems completely out of it at the moment. She doesn't seem like she wants to be there. I wonder why. But yeah, I don't know if that's the right call from Ellis, because she seemingly does not want to be there, especially in her actual reply of, okay. And it's like, alright.
I think the major things we learned this episode were Tabby actually told Jim that the wires aren't connected to anything, and then he notices that the exit sign is flickering, and he's starting to investigate that. So that's going to be a new plot point for sure. The next thing is we see the Matthews are now going to stay with Kenny's mum and Kenny and Jade. So that's a new plot point. And we also learned that half of the supplies of crops have been taken out by the storm. So there's going to be a serious amount of rationing. And finally, the other major thing we learned was that there is a girl in the forest from the bus, and she has had a spike from the trap put through her head by monsters, which look like new monsters as well. And she's been left out in the forest and she's been tortured, but she hasn't been eaten by the monsters. They literally just played with her.
In a weird form of torture way. But they also made her what? They seemingly ate Brian, her boyfriend, which is very strange that they would then leave her out in the forest. It kind of brings up that whole theory that it's possible that the monsters are feeding off of emotion again. Because there's a lot of emotion. Like, why would they torture in that way if it wasn't to then get some kind of rise either out of the townsfolk or whoever found them, but also her as well. Maybe Brian and Kelly didn't understand what the creatures were, and therefore weren't scared enough of them, and they weren't given enough food off of them, or kind of feeding off of them. They weren't getting enough from them, so they decided to openly torture them so they would understand and get more emotion out of them. What is the moral dilemma of actually killing her? They essentially tortured her by pulling the metal rod out instead of just... Why didn't they just shoot her? That was clearly more humane. And also, if they were trying to save her, why would they try to pull the metal rod out? Surely you'd move the head. I mean, she'd probably die anyway, but surely you would move the head down the metal rod. You wouldn't try and rip the metal rod that's jammed into the wood behind it. It just feels like you're trying to kill her at that point.
I'm not a first aid expert, so I can't comment.
Neither am I. I've watched enough 24 hours in A&E to know that you don't just... You don't grab the rod, then start making circular motions and then rip it out of her brain.
Well, she didn't last long anyway, did she?
No wonder he didn't exactly do it gently. A good point what you made earlier was the wires not connected, and then Jim goes to investigate the flickering exit sign. I wonder if that's some sort of foreshadowing, whether that's telling him to get out.
It does seem to be that the town tells you to do certain things. Remember when Boyd in season 1 was unsure whether or not to do the big swing and go out on a final adventure, and then the jukebox played his song from his wedding with Abby?
It kind of pushes you in certain directions.
But the big thing to remember is that Father Cattry was sure that he was given signs to do a certain thing and that his quest was going to be long and he was going to go with Sarah and Boyd. And then he gets killed. So the signs are quite misleading at times.
Or whether the signs are actually even on their side. The signs could be easily working with the monsters. It doesn't necessarily mean the signs are actually helping them. It kind of goes back to that point again that we've made in our past videos of who is actually helping them. It's very hard to tell, even for the boy in white. Is he actually helping or is he actually hurting them? You've actually got no idea what their motives are of some of these creatures and some of the signs and dreams that they've been having. The lack of communication and then the lack of understanding of these dreams. Even Fatima said that people have gone crazy trying to understand them because they can mean almost anything. Reading into them can also lead you down a dangerous path, which might be happening to Jade with the symbols.
Yeah, I think the biggest part of this episode for me, anyway, in terms of something that we learned and something that I've been looking forward to see, is the introduction of the twins.
Yeah, the twins from the trailer. Now, you think they're almost like Jack and Jill, don't you? I remember you saying that watching the episode.
Hansel and Gretel, I think, is the spookier version of the Jack and Jill story and the Jack and Jill folklore. But I think they are dead spooky. I think one's a boy, one's a girl, and I think they might even be referenced in the intro. In the intro, we've been seeing a little picture framed on a mantelpiece or a little side table, and it looks like a boy and a girl dressed up as twins, and it looks just like these two freaky kids, but they're a bit like disgusting and terrifying looking.
What's your interpretation of the terrible game of Jenga that they've been playing? Ethan he calls it a puzzle. We saw it in the tunnel. We get the flashback into the tunnel of a ball hitting and knocking over the puzzle. What's your take on that? Is it a bad game of Jenga or is it an actual puzzle?
Yeah, there's definitely two sides to it. So you have the children seem to be playing with it like it is a big game of Jenga, but it also looks slightly like a Viking funeral mound, and we've seen quite a few different Nordic like buildings. The hut which Boyd was in, and you also have the talismans which have Nordic runes on them. It seems so. It looks a bit like a funeral mound. So I wonder if that's just any symbology there at all, or whether it is just a creepy game of Jenga or game of bowls even.
Another thing I want to talk about. What's your thoughts on why they pinned her to the tree?
I think they were new monsters. I think they are the monsters that they saw downstairs downstairs. I think it was the monsters downstairs.
Downstairs.
Yeah. Anyway, when Tabby and Victor are in the caves underneath the town, they see a bunch of new monsters we haven't seen before, and I think these were the new monsters. They've woken them up, and by seeing them, other people maybe can see some of them as well. I think the twins only Tabby can see, but some of the jocks and the cheerleaders. I think a jock was one of the new monsters that Kelly and Brian opened the door to. I think they were new monsters, and these new monsters are the level 2, which is what Martin, who was chained to the wall, was talking about. They're the next step up. They're not just monstrous hunters who are out there to kill you. These people want to play. These monsters want to play with you. They're like serial killers. They're evil, mate. They're super evil. They're not as evil as the other ones. They're more evil. I'm telling you.
Everyone that has been brought here has been very emotional. You've not really had anyone that has been brought here that's cool, calculated, doesn't feel any emotions, like a serial killer or a psychopath. You've got people that feel emotions very vibrantly and very vividly. And I wonder if the place is kind of consciously making that decision to bring those people here. Because throughout the entire time, we have not seen one person who's had no emotion. In fact, the place is playing people's emotions to their utmost. It hasn't brought psychopaths there that have no emotion. It's brought people there that have extreme emotions.
Yeah, exactly. It's Dark Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. for adults. I totally agree with your Monsters Inc. theory. The place is filled with screamo meters.
That explains the electricity then, doesn't it? The wires are not connecting. It's because it's just screams.
It's screamo meter. That's right.
Maybe they need to change the laughter. Get Smiley cracking some jokes.
I can't wait for From 2 University special, when all the monsters go to university instead.
They learn the walk, they learn the smile.
Do you think after they get a catch, like Smiley, because he had a couple of people on the bus, do you think they get so full they go comatose for a while, like a bear or something?
I wonder if they're just a very social, egalitarian society, and they have to share it out. Everyone has to get a kill each.
Another big point is Fatima is going to get married to Ellis now. It looks like that's going to happen.
Red wedding incoming. Absolutely. They're all dead. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you've seen Game of Thrones, you should know that a gathering of people for a wedding with wine and everything is a very good opportunity for a big twist.
Yeah, everything's going to go downhill. I bet they tried to make it artsy and they tried to host it at night or something in Colony House, and it just goes horribly wrong because someone's going to open the doors. It's going to go badly, or they're going to host a wedding during the day and then people are going to get too drunk. I mean, what are they going to do without the bartender now?
That's a really good point.
Who's going to cater for this event?
These are the serious
There's a
questions.
business opportunity on the horizon here, people, and you're not seeing it.
It's a serious point. Though. Who's running the bar at the minute? They need to replace a few people.
Well, that's just it. No one's running the bar. and there's been no downsides because you don't need to get drunk there.
Oh, well.
If anything, there's been less deaths because the bar's not there.
It's major. So one other really big point, obviously, at the end we found out Sarah is back.
Yeah, she's actually alive. Kind of surprising. Well, it's not really surprising, is it? I mean, she's one of the main characters.
And where was she?
I think she went through the same tree. I just think the trees can shift. And in between her and Boyd getting in the same tree, unless she's just pushed Boyd into the tree and then just doesn't run her. The boy in white is told that, nah, don't actually go that way. Go this way.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to find out what happened to her because Boyd went back in time, it seems. At least that's my little theory. But
What,
Sarah...
You think when Boyd met the person in change, you think he went back in time?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when he comes through that door and he's holding like a medieval torch almost, it's ruins behind him. And it looks like he's gone through time. That's my belief anyway. But it looks like Sarah has actually just appeared in the same time period in Father Cattry's basement, which is where she was. So it's almost like destiny, you know? She was meant to go back there.
Or did she know that Father Cattry was already dead and therefore the place would be empty? And she had to run downstairs the minute she heard Kenny coming in?
Yeah, it'd be great to know if she went back in time somewhere as well.
Maybe Father Cattry had a faraway tree in his basement.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, the actual church itself looks pretty old-fashioned and out of keeping with the rest of the town.
It's still bizarre that there's not one Bible or anything, any kind of religious kind of scripture. Even though there is a church there, no religious scripture. The only thing religious or the iconography of it has been the graves, and they don't seem to be disturbed. I still think it possibly has something to do with religion. The lack of communication is kind of annoying at this point. The amount of people that know stuff are just refusing to talk. Victor, now Boyd. Even if he does think it's a dream, at least communicate. I mean, he kind of did that to Donna when they were in the greenhouse, but then doesn't just tell people what you saw in the forest. I don't get why he wouldn't tell people. It's not like it's as crazy as, you know, how they got there or there's monsters in the woods. Like, what is crazy about telling people, oh, I turned up, there's a guy chained to the wall, don't know what it meant? What is the downside of him telling?
I mean, I totally agree, but I think that, I don't know, I wonder if the town would just stop you if you tried to communicate things too clearly. Plus, there wouldn't be a show to watch. But I think the town itself would prevent you the same way it did when you tried to set up a radio tower and you were so clever you managed to get the radio working and everything. It just sent, right, here's a storm, I'm going to stop you. So I think if you over-communicate, they are watching so closely, they'd be like, whoa, they're starting to know a bit too much about this town now.
Maybe that's why Victor survived so long, he's kept his fucking mouth shut.
Exactly.
Yeah, occasionally we do agree on stuff on this channel.
Please agree with me on that one. You agreed with me and then the audio cut out, sadly.
Yeah, nightmare of our recording studio. Sound is bad, quality's bad. You know what you got yourself into when you joined this channel. Sub.
Like, comment, and subscribe. But please do not comment that our audio quality is bad.
We will cry.
So, yeah.
It is very possible that Victor has learned that everyone who has started to try and figure stuff out has suddenly been killed off. Maybe that is why he is just not talking. He gives meaningful looks.
He keeps himself to himself, and maybe that is a survival technique. Maybe they don't check the drawings, and that's why he does such like childish drawings, because it seems he can communicate things about the place without being targeted by whatever the place is.
If that is a theory, that means they can hear. So are all the rooms bugged?
Well, quite possibly.
Is it a CIA operation?
No, I don't think it's got anything to do with the government, but I think it is slightly magical. And I think, because the wires work without any real electricity, it seems. I think the place is bugged per se, but not in the way that we're thinking, like, oh, there are microphones and everything. I think it is just magic.
They've hacked the phones.
There are no phones. That's a good point, actually. No phones, yeah.
Well, there are phones, they just don't use them.
Yeah, they don't work at all.
Yeah, they need charging. Yeah, that's another good point. Victor gets very angry that Jade went in his room and said, that's my stuff, you don't go in my room. He lived at Colony House. I don't understand, like, is it his stuff? Like, if it's his stuff, why didn't he just live in the town?
He lived in a truck at some points as well, didn't he? But he didn't take a talisman with him.
He has a ton of stuff, actually.
He's a thief, for sure.
Oh, well, we figured that out when he's when he's got the canned food truck of all. everyone's stuff.
Honestly, he's a little thief. I think the thing we have to ask ourselves now is Boyd right? Is Boyd the main character, or is he reading too much into what is, in my mind, a pretty small coincidence? So someone was called Brian, someone's called Kelly. They're both pretty common names, especially in North America. And it happens to be the first person who died in his arms in a very different way, as he explains, to the way that Kelly was left. Seems to just be a pretty small coincidence to me, but it would drive you mad, wouldn't it, in this town?
It would, especially as that's the first person that's, died in his arm, and then suddenly that could be one psychological thing play on him, make him think that he's going crazy. Anyway, that's all we have time for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you look at our season 2 predictions, comment if any of them have come right, like, comment, subscribe. Please give us money.
Why do you always go into begging mode?
Money now. Money, please.
If you don't like the quality of our sound, please donate one Rode microphone
per person.
Yeah, 2 please. If you like this video, our season 2 predictions,